Hey, so we've been working on a lot of heavy stuff with codependency, and we're not done. We thought we'd talk a little bit more about relationships, enabling, and how relationships can become adulterous.
And trigger warning, Tanya has the Bible out, so I'm not sure what she has planned, but I just wanted to throw out a trigger warning there if anybody's going to get hypersensitive over any biblical readings.
We're a Christian program, though.
Just saying.
So we're looking at idolatrous relationships, and what does that mean? How does codependency keep you from God?
Real life for real families. Hurts, habits, and hang-ups happen in every family.
Jerry and I are here with tools to help you trust God, clean house, and tell the truth to ramp up the joy in your family.
You have what it takes.
It's time to become sober on purpose
For His purpose.
Last week, I really got triggered by all the codependency work and codependent parenting. So if you didn't hear that one, you need to go back and listen to that one. I believe that's episode 18 of codependent parenting. And then there's some more of that on the blog. And so I dug back out some things that were a pivot point for me. And it was Jeff VanVonderen and his work on chemical addiction. He has several books on that, and especially the shame-based family. One of the concepts that he talks about, that our therapist talked about with us, is equity rescuing.
You guys know what equity rescuing is? Let me explain it to you. So equity rescuing, just for those who don't know, is putting in a bunch of effort to save something that either may not be worth saving or doesn't want to be saved. So like a relationship that you've invested so much time into to try and make it right, and it's not working out, but you're just going to put in continued effort to save it, even though it may not be worth doing.
It's kind of like the staying on hold. If you've been on hold for 4 minutes, you're like, I've already invested 4 minutes into this, so I'm going to stay on hold for a little bit longer. And then you're on hold for 10 minutes, and you've already put more equity into it, and you stay for 10 minutes longer. And at some point, you will say you're done. But it is rescuing something that really doesn't have a whole lot of value because we have a huge sense of loss aversion. You want to talk about loss? That's an economic term, loss aversion.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, loss aversion is the idea that the greater the amount of loss. So, for example, in the regard to being on hold on the phone, so you've been on hold for 20 minutes. So if you are to quit, then you've just lost the 20 minutes with no gain whatsoever. So it's an aversion to wanting to cut your losses and move on.
So if somebody offered you $20 but you were going to lose $10, you still would grieve the $10 more than the $20 that you got.
Yeah. So like if I'll give you $10 now, or I'll give you a chance to win 100, but you got to roll these 2 dice and get snake eyes. Most people would probably take the 10 now rather than risk, the 1 out of 12 chance of rolling snake eyes. I think that's right. Is it 1 out of 12? It might be worse odds than that. But there's a loss aversion to the $10.
And as long as there's loss aversion, you may not be willing to move forward into something that would be even better for you. And I was just challenged by a friend of ours who's here. His challenge, or his statement to me, was, you are constantly running away from something rather than toward it. And I think as I turned that over a little bit more, not only running away, also staying the same. So the familiar was much more important. And I think that's part of equity rescuing is, I know what I have here. It may not be great, but at least I know what I have, rather than stepping forward and finding out if it could be better. It is like learning any new skill. Maybe it could be worse, right?
Right.
So when you're doing equity rescuing, it is often the codependent who is saying, okay, I'm going to stay in this because at least I know what the issue is with the addict or with the person who is mood altering in whatever the way they're doing it, rather than trying to break free of that and do something else. Or they're saying, I've put 15 years in on this. I don't want to do something different because then I will lose what I have and it won't get any better, which is not true. So with equity rescuing often comes unhelpful help and help with good intentions. You want to talk about unhelpful help? That's one of my favorites.
I don't have any experience with unhelpful help.
You have all kinds of experience with unhelpful help.
I never do it. I never do it.
Okay, explain to them what unhelpful help is.
Well, for the men out there who are listening, so if your wife has come home from a hard day of doing whatever she was doing and she wants to share about it, and that's what she wants to do. She wants to share about it and she wants to get it off her chest and she just wants to, lay out the medical report, so to speak. And we want to offer suggestions on how to correct the way you're feeling or how to make it right. That is a perfect example of unhelpful help because that's not what she's looking for. She's looking for to tell her story is all.
Unhelpful help is either doing something for somebody that they can do themselves or doing something for somebody that they really don't want done. And I do this for Jerry all the time. I think we gave you the phone example to where I broke my... Did I give the phone example on it?
I don't remember.
So anyway, Jerry broke his... he had an iPhone and he broke his iPhone. And no, what did you do? Jerry broke his iPhone case. And I looked at the iPhone case and I said, oh, without the case, you're going to break your iPhone and it's going to cost us a lot of money. So I had a case on my iPhone, which was the same size, and I gave him my case, and then I was going to go buy myself a case. The problem was that Jerry didn't want a case. Do you want to tell him what you told me?
I don't remember what I told you, but it's true. I didn't want a case. I certainly didn't want that case, but I wasn't getting out of this without putting that case on. So I took the case that she most generously offered and I put it on my phone.
You didn't take it right away. You said, I don't want this. I don't want this case. You didn't say I have another plan, but you were tired and I forced the case on him. And then you want to tell him what happened?
And then Tanya proceeded to break her phone that did not have a case now.
I was going to buy a case within a week, and I broke my phone after having just put a $150 piece of new glass on my phone because I was tired of a cracked screen, and I broke my phone. And then Jerry said, do you remember what you said?
I do not remember.
He said, I'm really sorry that you broke your phone. When mine broke, I was just going to buy another $100 phone instead of upping for the $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 iPhone and use that one. So, by offering him unhelpful help, I actually cost myself another $150 when his solution was better, but I pushed my help on him. So the unhelpful help part of this scenario was I had a solution. Jerry did not share with me his solution, and I forced my solution on him when he had a better solution. He could have done this for himself, but I decided I needed to protect the family assets and protect him and do that instead of listening to what was actually going on. How would we do this in a parent-child scenario? I think we do it all the time.
Who's the child and who's the parent in this situation?
Just in the generic parent-child situation.
So the child doesn't have a protector on their phone?
No, not in the phone situation. We've just talked about codependent parenting. So how does this happen? How does unhelpful help happen in a parent-child situation?
Oh, well, child gets a bad grade, and the parent goes and talks to the teacher about how they can help get the grade up.
Or the parent goes and tells the teacher that the child needs to get the grade up.
Yeah, exactly.
Or I see it also happening when the parent might be doing things for the child that the child can do for themselves. And so it's the college student that gets to, it's the student that gets to college and doesn't know how to do their laundry.
Yep.
Or the mother that keeps doing things for the child, even when the child says, no, that's not the way I want to take care of it. I want to take care of it differently. We've had some recent scenarios with Wesley about that.
So recently we avoided unhelpful help scenario with Wesley in regard to, he joined the wrestling team, and he did it for a while and had a couple competitions, and he just decided that wasn't something that he wanted to do, particularly one morning when he had to be up at 4 a.m. to go, or the next morning when he had to get up super duper early to get on the bus to travel countless hours, to hang out countless hours of the day, to then get on the bus and drive countless hours back. And we kind of supported his decision, but we also believed that it was really important that he notify his team and his coach. And we were getting ready to do that for him and trying to figure out which parent was going to do it, which parent was going to notify the coach, and what we were going to say. And then it occurred to us that, well, if this is his decision, he should be making that email or that contact.
We both sat down to email the coach. You sat down to email the coach, and then I sat down to email the coach. And we're strong believers in that if you commit to something, you should go ahead and do it. On the other hand, we're trying to help this child move into adulthood at 14. And you didn't sign up for wrestling, right?
No, I did at one point.
No, you didn't sign up for wrestling at this school.
No.
And I didn't sign up for wrestling. And we looked at it and we thought, well, if we're letting him do other adult decisions, like what is he going to eat and if he's going to work this summer and what team is he going to join, why are we picking up the pieces? So that falls under the category of doing something for somebody that they can do for themselves.
Yes.
And sometimes you do unhelpful help because it is a reflection on you.
Well, or we feel that it's a reflection on us, but particularly sensitive to these errors when it's our children, because society and parents tend to believe that all faults within the children are a result of bad parenting.
Yes, and the biblical story that goes along with this is the prodigal son. So the son comes in Eastern culture. It would have been really a bad reflection on the father for the son to come to him and say, I want my inheritance now, and I don't care about you, and you need to divide up everything and give it to me. And the father does something really wise. Instead of taking the blame on himself or saying, son, you don't want to do that, he gives the son what he asks for, and the son goes and spends it all, and then the son realizes what has happened. If you continue to do unhelpful help for people and clean up their messes like I did with the iPhone, then there's no lesson learned. Like if we had cleaned up, Wes wasn't really creating a mess, but if we had gone ahead and fixed this for Wes, fixed his grades, fixed his relationship with the coach, done those types of things, he's not really taking responsibility for himself in these little issues. And then what can happen in the bigger issues?
Yeah, I remember when we were studying Love and Logic, and the one guy was talking about how we need to allow them the opportunity to fail, provided that there's not a high risk of death or dismemberment. They need to have this opportunity to fail. He talked about two children who were wrestling by the stairwell, and he said to them, hey, if you guys don't quit that or move locations, one of you guys is probably going to end up tumbling down the stairwell. The children, he said, looked over at him, and they contemplated the reality that he wasn't telling him not to. He wasn't giving him an ultimatum. So then after a few moments, they continued to wrestle. And he said, I'm a Christian. So in these situations, I like to pray. And he put his hands together in the sign of the prayer. And he said, Father, please let one or both of them tumble down the stairs. I just always found that so amusing.
And that's the story of the prodigal son. Is the prodigal son had to come to his senses. He had to come to his own understanding that what was happening was not something that was worthwhile for him. And if we continue to equity rescue, do unhelpful help, then would never allow that person to take responsibility for themselves or even to respect themselves.
Yeah, I don't want to get too far off on a tangent because I know we have other topics to talk about here, but I know from personal experience that I tend not to learn from other people's mistakes or from good advice. I have to make mistakes, or from my successes. I learn from my mistakes, and I have to make mistakes in an effort to correct that and feel the natural consequences associated with those mistakes.
So in looking at unhelpful help and equity rescuing, we can also look at how relationships become idolatrous. And when we look at the idea that everyone needs love, significance, and security, and we look to a relationship, a human relationship, to give us that, we can become idolatrous about that relationship. And a lot of the work that Jeff VanVonderen does deals with family systems, but he puts a twist on it in looking at how your current relationships are ways that you have tried to fix another person because if they're okay, you're okay. So in looking at that, there are several different roles that happen in a family, and those roles are...
All right, I'll talk about those. So the 6 traditional different roles are the rescuer, which is normally an adult, and they have the job of, they raise efficiency of the family. They try and keep the peace. The next one would be the person with the addiction. Their job is the focus of the family. So in other words, they're the focal point for the family. They don't really contribute anything positively or productively to the family, but everyone is always trying to make them well or make them not be angry. The next one is the hero. Their job is to raise the family esteem. Next one, the rebel. Job is to refocus the attention of the family on themselves and away from the negativity of that the addict is probably bringing. 5th role is the reliever. Usually the youngest. Their job is to bring relief and not be a problem. And the last one is the clown, to lighten up the situation. So sometimes I think in our family, since we're only 4, we see people taking on multiple roles and even switching roles.
And what happens often in an addiction situation is the addict may get well, but the family is still stuck in those roles. So even if the addict moves out of the addiction roles, the person who is the codependent, who hasn't had a whole lot of attention until this point, may move into that role. So maybe the substance abuser has quit abusing substances and the codependent goes down and says, well, I need. And the whole family switches and puts that person in the middle. So it can shift back and forth. And then the other thing is the hero role often gets filled by the first child of how can I raise the positive energy in the family? Can I be the track star? Can I be the great grade person? Can I be that person? And that leaves the rebel, the clown role or the reliever role for the second child. If you have a third child, they pick up another role. But as soon as if the hero fails, so if the adult addict gets clean, moves out of the center of the circle, but the hero is struggling to find their place, they may become the addict, and then everybody switches around and puts them in the middle. So the real key is that just getting sober doesn't solve the problem. This family has been stuck in these loops of unhelpful help, equity rescuing, idolatrous relationships for a long time. And that's where we have really focused this podcast on. It's not enough just to get sober. You have to have the tools and the ability to use the tools to get well.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that, this model that I talked about, this is a shame-based family structure. So I think most families have experiments in shame-based family structure, even when they're doing most things right. We tend to revert to a shame-based structure sometimes. But, that this is not a healthy model that I described.
So this is a model that goes along with what we were talking about being a codependent parent or having been parented by codependents. There's a lot of toxicity and shame in this model. And what VanVonderen says scripture-wise is really, really interesting is that he says in 1 Corinthians 5, it says, your boasting is not good. Don't you know that a little yeast works through the whole batch of dough? Get rid of the old yeast that you may be a new batch without yeast, as you really are. And I've never understood that, but I do make bread. And so in ancient times, when they used to make bread, in biblical times, they would take a little pinch of the old dough and put it in the new dough to make it leaven itself. They didn't have in a jar rapid rise yeast that you just add to the dough. That would be fresh yeast. So if the old yeast was contaminated or had any problems, it would leaven the next set of dough with those problems. So a little leavening goes a long way. this is both positive and negative. If you've got a shame-based system where people keep equity rescuing, keep doing idolatrous relationships, trying to fix themselves through correcting and controlling other people, and keep doing unhelpful help, it just keeps generationally doing the same thing over and over again, no matter who gets well or who gets sober. The key is to break that pattern, to have a rebirth in the family relationship, to look at it and say, we're stuck and we need to be able to move more fluidly. And that's where VanVonderen, I think, does some of his best work, and is in the sense that all families face crisis. And that's not really the problem. The problem is, can they move in and out of the crisis? So if one member breaks a leg or an arm and they have to be in the center of the family circle for a while, then they need to be able to come back out and be on the outside. What happens with an addict or with somebody who takes up all the time and energy of the family is they never come back out and be on the outside, even sometimes when they're not there. You can have a parent who passes away, but the whole family system still functions around that understanding of, well, we always needed to placate dad, or we always needed to placate mom, and so we're going to continue doing that system even when that person is not there.
All right, so I have an example. Right now, I am still sick. Been battling this cold for over 2 weeks. Comes and it goes. So I have moved into the center of this relationship. I've taken the role of the addict, and I am requiring the most attention, particularly trying to hold down my job and be very ill in my free time. So this is a lot more reminiscent of the healthy relationship, where if Tanya was to be sick, or one of the boys was to be sick, they could move into that role too. And the other ones would have to pick up the slack and fill the other roles. But I think we should maybe at some point, Tanya, draw a chart of what it looks like in a more healthy relationship.
I'm glad you said that, because we have a book.
Oh, do we?
And so does Jeff VanVonderen has this. So I borrowed this from him, and it is the chart of how families get stuck and how families get unstuck. And one of the ways to get unstuck is to look at the unhelpful help, look at the equity rescuing, and look at the idolatrous relationships, and look at the roles in there. And it really is a fluid way to be the role. So Jerry takes a great job. He makes money for the family. He's the hero at that moment. And then later on, I'm the one who single-handedly takes care of the kids, manages the household, takes care of everything, and I'm the hero. And then after that, Wesley brings in good grades, has a great basketball season, and he can be the hero. And then later on, Elijah does a great theater program, and he really represents the family well, and he does his podcast, and he's the hero. So it can work the other way. And as Jerry said, in just regular family colds, it can be for a while, we pick up the slack for one, and then we pick up the slack for the other. And it's this shifting and changing, that's this unstuckness that keeps us from being overwhelmed by being in a stuck relationship, to where we have to do this idolatrous relationship that fixing somebody else will make me better, doing the unhelpful help, where I make sure that everybody's okay, no matter what it costs me, and do things for them that they can do for themselves, or doing the equity rescuing something that really isn't working just because I put in a lot of time and effort on it. Those are all underneath the codependency umbrella. Those are the things that can happen. And we've talked a little bit about the shame-based system, but I really invite you to check out Jeff VanVonderen's work, and I'll put that in the show notes as well, because those are pieces that really opened my eyes to what was happening in our relationship. And they're so underneath, especially getting hold of the equity rescuing, that maybe sometimes it's just time to let go. All right. Thank you for listening to us again. I hope these concepts have been helpful. We sure would appreciate your review on iTunes. All you have to do is go in there. I've got a little video even to go in there. It takes less than 40 seconds. That's as long as the video does. Go in and hit reviews. We do appreciate your reviews on other platforms, but iTunes is really the one we're going for. The other thing is, we are coming out with the Sober on Purpose Family Guide. That should be out by the end of March. And we want you to look for that, pick it up. It has a lot of the concepts we've been talking about and refers back to these podcasts.
Yeah, and we're going to be doing a new chapter in our lives here pretty soon where I'm going to be taking on a new line of work, and we'll be separated for a number of days a week probably. And I hope that we can build a platform where we're doing podcasts remotely, where Tanya's at home and I'm on the road. And I really look forward to that. Really look forward to you guys joining us there on our maybe even live YouTubes.
We've been working on how that works. And we're adding a new format to the podcast. We're going to interview some guests in the next coming weeks and put those on. So if there are people that you would want us to interview, let us know. We would like to do that.
Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.